And I think this episode speaks a lot about the nature of Charitropakhyan. The mantris are just able to, you know what, like, hey, we don't like the ending. Let's work on it. Let's reform the ending. What I see is that I see the guru sitting there with all these different individuals, and they're creating these stories. Maybe they're harvesting them. Maybe they're finding these stories from different traditions and repurposing them, or they're creating new stories of their own, or they're taking a story and retelling it. Jack and Jill went up the hill, right? So that story already exists. But I can retell that story, repurpose it, reutilize it for my own purposes. So I can say Jack and Jill went up the mountain instead of a hill. I want to talk about a mountain. But then I'm repurposing it because I want a different outcome to the story. And that's what this 37 Charitr does. They took that story and they're like, you know what? Let's retell the ending. Let's revise the ending. And that in itself, is just mind-blowing. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Do you remember the last Charitr we covered? It was on this individual named Gaide Khan. And, the story ended with his wife thinking that she killed him. And she sits by the banks of this river, and that's kind of where the story ended. But check this next Charitr out. The next Charitr we're going to cover today is the 37th one. And it starts off with the advisors looking back at the ending they created for the previous story, and they're like, you know what, we gotta change some stuff around. So see how this starts here. Dohra nar charitr nirpake nikat mantri kahan bichar. So the advisors who are sitting there, they're sharing these stories with Charitr Singh. They're like, you know what, we don't really feel so content with the ending of that 36 Charitr, especially that part where Gaide Khan, he plays a Charitr of his own, right? He hides behind a buffalo, and the wife Fatemati is thinking that she's hitting Gaide Khan, but when in reality she's actually just hitting a buffalo, right? So they wanna work on that. They want to shape it up a little bit. The Tabakatha Chatisavi ehibid kehi sudar, and that way they're now going to reform that 36 Charitr, especially that ending portion right there. And let's see what they do with it. Tavantriya ko turtihi dogar kau ubar. So if you can remember that scene, Gaide Khan is being attacked by Fatemati, and now in this new version, there is no buffalo there to protect Gaide Khan, okay? So Fatemati goes in for a swing with her sword, and boom, it strikes Gaide Khan in the arm. He gets hurt, and right away after he gets hurt, he responds with an attack of his own. Tahe turat marat peho gare sayo dar. And what he does, he has a rope in his neck. He has some rope in his hands. After he gets hit, he gets hurt, he turns around, grabs the rope, puts it around her neck, Fatemati, squeezes it, chokes her to death. Va rasya keh chan keh badis baho banai. And then he proceeds to take the other end of the rope and attach it to the roof of the hut or the house that he's in. And in a way, it looks like now her body's kind of hanging down from the roof, and it looks like she killed herself, right? And then he goes outside to his neighbors, and he starts yelling out. He starts shouting out, look what happened to me, look what happened to me. He calls everyone out of their homes, makes a scene. And he shows the scars he has on his body from the fight that he had with his wife. He then goes to take everyone, all of his neighbors, he takes all of them to his home to show the state of his wife, right? And then he cries and he wails and he says the following. He said, when my wife saw these scars on me, she became so stressed and anxious. And she kicks me out of my house. La pasi surlok bihari, while she went to the heavens herself. Bhav ke she, meaning that she hanged herself. Dohra doodh dohat kuttiya namit mehki maras mohe. And then he goes on to explain how he got the scars in the first place. And he says that as I was trying to milk the calf, the mother of the calf got angry and came raging towards me. And she gave me such a scar as if I was hit by a sword. Yeah. So here he is kind of cleaning up the scene here, just making people know that, look, if this is not a murder scene. My wife has in fact committed suicide, right? And why did she commit suicide? Because she saw the scars on me, and she was so anxious by the scars on me. She was so so saddened, so depressed, that she went out and killed herself. Yeah, what a great story, right? But people fell for it, right? At least in this version here. Ab acho tehe kavan banaya. Now he's like, let's make her a nice coffin. And we'll dig well into the ground. Let's prepare her grave. And I will never marry again in this life. Instead, I will live the remainder of my life in her loving memory. Dohra logan saban balai ka acho kavan banai. After all the preparation was done for the funeral, he calls forth all of the neighbors again, and he has this well built coffin, ready. He has dug into the floor, and it's the burial is ready to be commenced. Durachari nar kahe ehbid diya dabai. In this way, the narrators say, the unfaithful woman has been buried, right? She's been buried. And this is the end of the 37th Charitr. And there's 2-3 things here that I find quite interesting. Well, let's look at the story of it itself, right? The story itself, being changed or reformed, revised, right, to what it is now. There's 2 different endings, right? The first ending was, okay, the guy is alive, the girl is alive, right? But the girl is shown as someone who had no remorse, right? She goes sits at the bank of this river, and she's sitting there with not even a single sign on her face that shows that, well, you know what, maybe she's upset about what she's done, right? No, but she's just sitting there and just looking out into the distance, right? That was kind of the first ending. The second ending is like more of the shift of victory, you can say, has been shifted over to Gaide Khan, where now he's kind of seen as victorious for 2 reasons. A, because he's killed the unfaithful woman, and B, he's kind of repurposed the story itself to show that, hey, it's not me, I'm the sorry one here, my wife died, so I'm not the one. It's like my poor state. My wife has killed herself. Like, look at my story. Right? It's kind of like that. So he's kind of saved his public image in a way, right? As compared to this first story, we don't know what will happen, right? Will she ever come back home, right? Or she might just have ran away and again could have hurt his public image, right? So there's kind of that part to this. And it's also kind of interesting to see how people are very innocent, very gullible. He goes on to show this sad story of how, like, he was hurt by the buffalo, and his wife thinks that she sees these scars, and she goes on to kill herself. And he says this story to the people of his village, of his area, and they're shown to be quite gullible. And another thing I want to talk about here is kind of how the mantris, the advisors, they have this flexibility of reutilizing a story, shifting it around to maybe present a different outcome, and that by itself is so fascinating. And that kind of gives you a little bit more picture of what Charitropakhyan is. And we're 37 episodes in, and each and every episode, right, it's slowly kind of giving you a piece of the puzzle of what Charitropakhyan is. And there's been so many different theories of what Charitropakhyan is, its purpose, its application. Like, this has been a subject of many conversations. But has anyone really found a plausible answer? That's up to debate. That's really up to you and how you kind of perceive all that information that you take in. But the point of this series is precisely for you to kind of make your own picture. Let Charitropakhyan speak to you, right? That's kind of the idea here. And I think this episode in itself speaks a lot about the nature of Charitropakhyan, speaks a lot about it in the way the mantris are just able to, like, hey, we don't like the ending. Let's work on it. Let's reform the ending. And the kind of, what it makes me think about is the Anandpur Darbar. And for anyone that doesn't know, for about 26 years, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj has set up a library called the Anandpur Darbar, located in, as the name implies, Anandpur Sahib, right? And in this library, Guru Sahib had cultivated such an environment where scholars, critical thinkers, philosophers, they were all sharing a room, right? With Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj being the leader of that room. And they were all going through these different endeavors of translating different texts from different backgrounds and traditions. Not only were they translating, but they were having conversations on these different texts, maybe even debates. And kind of, it was this whole arena of thinkers, of seekers coming together and putting ideas to the test, refining them over and over to kind of reach this ultimate state of what a human being should do in this world, what a human being's life should look like, right? The fundamental questions that we have today. What is our purpose of life, right? Every single person tries to answer that question, even if their resources are the same. Let's say you put 5, 6 in a room, and you say, what is the point of life? Maybe each person will give a different answer, even though their resource, being Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Guru Mat, is all the same. One might say to please the Guru. One might say to do seva until your body is no more. One might say to merge with Vaheguru. One might say to do so much kirtan and devotion until your brain and your mind just becomes, and your soul becomes one with the Guru. Like there could be 5 different answers to that one question. Now, come out of scope and see that there's more resources out there. You have the Quran, you have the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Bible, you have the Torah, you have the Gita, you have the Veds, you have the Shastras, you have the Simritis, you have Guru Granth Sahib, you have Dasam Granth Sahib, you have all these different sources, imagine, and you have all these different people that, take guidance from these different sources. Now imagine you ask the question, what is the purpose of life? Right? And they will all have so many different answers. Right? Every person is unique. And so in this darbar, they were going through different ideas. They were refining different ideas. And what Charitropakhyan tells me, what the story tells me about Charitropakhyan is what I see is that I see the Guru sitting there with all these different individuals. And they're creating these stories. Maybe they're harvesting them. Maybe they're finding these stories from different traditions and repurposing them, translating them, right? Or they're creating new stories of their own. Or they're taking a story and retelling it. So what that means is, let's say a story already exists, right? Jack and Jill went up the hill, right? So a story already exists. But I can retell that story, repurpose it, reutilize it for my own purposes. So I can say Jack and Jill went up the mountain instead of a hill. I want to talk about a mountain. Jack and Jill went up the mountain instead of... So the 2 characters say the same because it triggers a certain amount of knowledge within my audience. But then I'm repurposing it because I want a different outcome to the story. And that's what this 37 Charitr does. It takes a story that they themselves have put together, right? Either through, again, either this was a story that already existed. This could have been some sort of historical event. This could have been some sort of legend. You know, it could be anything. Like that's where Charitropakhyan kind of, the bank of Charitropakhyan comes from any of these sources. But the cool thing was that they took that story and they're like, you know what? Let's retell the ending. Let's revise the ending. And that in itself, you know, is just mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So I hope you get a picture of what I'm seeing. You know, I hope you get a picture of that. And, you know, just seeing Guru Gobind Singh Ji sitting there with their kavis, their scholars, kind of going through these stories. And I'm imagining that is the advisors in this scenario might have even been the kavis themselves. The kavis are debating. They're like, you know what? The ending doesn't. You know what? There could be a better ending. Let's work on this ending. What if the kavis themselves are the advisors? You know. So there's just so many possibilities, but it's all fun to think about, and it's all fun to engage with, because at the end of the day, that is what vidya is. Education is. You know, education is meant to be a world that you dive into and you enjoy. You know, there's so much to this world, you know, and each and every corner you go into, it speaks volumes, you know. And then when you do get this education, sharing it with others, you know, it has its own fruits. Vidya vichari ta parupkari, right? From Guru Granth Sahib Ji. When we share ideas, I have an idea, I share it to you. You take that idea, and granted you have the credentials, that you'll have some type of prerequisites done, right? Obviously. But let's say granted we have that environment. I have an idea, I give you that idea. You take that idea and you're like, you know what? Let's refine this. There's some cracks here. I can fix this up. And you fix that up and you share with another person. That idea comes to the other person and they're like, you know what? There's some other things I can do with this. I can refine it even more. And granted, you guys are all on the same spectrum. You guys are all on the same mission, the same wavelength. The idea which started from here will eventually grow and grow and grow and grow and become something amazing. You know, it will become something amazing. It's like a seed. Each ear it goes through, each brain it goes through, each mind it goes through, each soul it goes through. The seed is given water, it's given the right environment, it's given the sunlight it needs, it's given the air it needs, it's given this perfect soil it needs to eventually become this beautiful tree. And that tree will give such fruits that the whole world will eat from. You know, the whole world will eat from these ideas, and that's truly what's happening today. Look at human society as a whole. You know, the way we're communicating right now. This did not exist 30 years ago, 40 years ago. In the way we're communicating right now, it did not exist. How did it start? It was an idea. Idea went through someone else's brain, and here comes the internet. Here comes fiber optics. Here comes the camera. Here comes YouTube. You know, and these are all ideas. And you know, that's just a beautiful thing about humanity. So I'll leave my thoughts to rest here, otherwise I'll keep talking. But I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and I'll look forward to catching you in the next one. Till then, take care. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.